You look, you die. That sounds pretty dangerous, right? SCP-1155 refers to predatory street art? This sounds dangerous as heck, guys. We're gonna check it out. It's by SCP Explained. Let's get into this animation.
There's no shortage of graffiti in most downtowns. From
Big
simple
cities at
tags
least.
to intricate murals.
We don't have
It
much
can be
here.
found in almost any alley,
Sometimes in
underpass,
underpasses.
and subway tunnel.
Yeah.
To most people who live and work there, it all blends into the background.
Right.
But
You get
one
used to
piece of
seeing it,
street
right?
art isn't so easy to ignore.
Okay.
Since unlike most graffiti,
It's a creature?
this one is animated.
All right.
John Freeman, an unassuming man in his
Pretty talented
mid-20s,
if you
was
could
out late one night
create
in
one of
April
those, huh?
2004.
Okay.
It was a Saturday, so he'd let loose a little more than he originally intended, and he was starting to feel the effects. So he
Okay.
went out back for some fresh air.
Yeah.
This wasn't the most popular bar in the city, so when he opened up the door and stepped out,
took a little
he
bit too
found
much.
himself completely alone.
Okay.
Despite that fact, he couldn't shake the sense that he was being watched.
All
He
right.
looked around, squinting and trying his best to focus.
And he's
his
drunk.
eyes. Just then, John thought he spotted someone behind the dumpster.
Okay.
So he
Might
decided
have
to
been
investigate.
somebody
When he
homeless.
looked behind the dumpster, there was no one to be found.
All right.
Instead, painted on the wall was a piece of street art.
I
it
see.
was a strange piece of art too. A half-human, half-owl creature.
Like an owl
rendered in
bear.
highly realistic detail.
Okay.
The figure was crouched over, and its eyes faced outwards.
Uh-huh.
Eyes that looked far too real. Like they were staring at him right out of the wall, following him as he swayed from
You know,
side
some
to
of those
side.
pictures
There
have
was something so wrong
got
about
some
it.
very
Its
illusionary
intense gaze,
properties,
its sharp beak,
like holes in the
its
floor. You ever
grasping
seen
claws.
those?
How could anyone paint something like this? It looked like it could crawl right out of the bricks.
Uh-huh.
Something about the painting made him nervous, but he couldn't look away. It was drawing him in, beckoning him. There was something about it that John
Interesting.
just couldn't resist. He stepped
then-
closer until he was close enough to reach out and touch it.
Okay.
What John didn't know was that he was also close enough for it to reach out
And touch him, right.
Before he could react, he saw the painting come to life.
Oh!
The feathers ruffle, the hands prepare to grab, the beak opens up. For John, it was all ready to.
Does it eat
From
them?
inside the bar, the other patrons heard a loud scream from the alley.
Right.
The bartender ran outside to see what was going
Oh,
on.
the
But when he
blood.
got there, all he found was a blood stain on the concrete.
Oh, so it
There
did
was
eat
no
him.
sign of John Freeman, and there was no graffiti on the wall.
Aha!
This is
so the
just one of
graffiti
the
moved
dozens of
around.
reported
So
attacks
it's not
attributed
just
to
one
what the
spot.
SCP Foundation has designated SCP-1155,
All right, the
or the
predatory
predatory
street
street art. It can appear on any wall in any
don't wanna look
major
at that one.
metropolitan area.
How do you
but it
avoid that,
prefers
though, right?
ones that are out of the way and isolated, such as back alleys, lonely parking structures, subway
Right.
tunnels, and underpasses. The creature depicted in the street art has the long, sinewy arms of a human, with the
Okay.
head and feathery body of a large owl.
Right.
And though its pose changes often, it's always facing out, watching.
Right.
The Foundation is no stranger to deadly works of
It's
art,
never turned around.
such as the infamous SCP-173, the
Yeah.
living sculpture who will snap your neck if you stop looking at it, or
Don't look.
SCP-1074,
Don't
the
not
abstract art capable of psychologically enthralling the viewer and leading them into a state of catatonia if exposed for too long.
Wow.
However, what sets SCP-1155 apart from these other
never
two
did
is the
1074
fact
yet.
that it's incredibly hard to contain and its methods are particularly violent and gruesome.
Yeah,
But
that
more
seems
on that
it.
later. If you spot this odd painting while you're out walking with friends, you probably wouldn't give it a second thought.
Right.
But if you're alone, it's a different story.
I see.
This SCP has an almost hypnotic effect
So it has
when
the
viewed by
way-
a lone person.
I see.
If you spot it,
So it
you'd
kinda
be
lures you
overwhelmed
in.
by curiosity, and you'll feel compelled to get a closer look.
So it's an anomalous
You can potentially
ability of it
resist
to
this
actually
hypnotic
draw
effect
in
with some
prey
effort,
when they're by
especially if you're
themselves.
aware of its anomalous properties.
Right.
Meaning knowledge really is power when it comes to SCP-1155.
Okay.
Once you get within 2 meters of SCP-1155, though, the creature will jump out of the wall and strike, with attacks usually following the same pattern.
Yeah.
First, the victim will be restrained to prevent struggle or escape. The
Okay.
eyes and tongue will then be removed, followed by the amputation of the hands and feet.
Oh,
the victim will
no.
then be disemboweled and the intestines and stomach removed,
Oh.
all in as little as 6 seconds. But
God
not all of these attacks
dang.
result in death. Some have actually managed to survive attacks by the predatory street art.
Oh my God,
with those lucky few being eligible for Class A amnestic therapy, courtesy of the Foundation. In most cases, though, there's no survivors to find and often not even a body at all.
Right.
Once SCP-1155 has begun its attack, and if it remains unspotted, it will snatch up its prey and vanish before appearing on the wall somewhere else. The Foundation has made attempts to discover where the bodies end up by equipping D-class test subjects with GPS trackers. But the results of these tests have been inconclusive. Recorded relocation events have covered distances as small as 15 meters or as far as 800 kilometers.
Wow.
But the true range of this creature's movement is unknown.
Okay.
If caught in the act of feeding, though, SCP-1155 will disappear, leaving its victim behind. Usually in these cases,
that's what happens.
The victim will bleed out and die.
Yeah.
But some
if it's interrupted,
they survive. Two such survivors were D-class personnel who were used for tests to see what happened when the attacks were
Poor
interrupted.
D-class, man.
Both were incoherent and badly wounded.
6 seconds
the attacks.
after
Their
all
eyes
that.
were gone.
Oh yeah.
And one of them also had his tongue, hands, and feet removed. But neither could adequately communicate what had happened to them. The one who still had a tongue claimed to still be able to see, in spite of his missing eyes, and that he was still looking through his stolen eyes. He described what he could see, a kind of grisly pantry, where it appeared SCP-1155 had stashed the remains of its previous victims, perhaps
he collects
to feed on
stuff.
later.
Or he
This
eats
D-class
it.
managed to
He might
escape
eat
from on-site quarters during an unrelated containment breach, running back to where he had been attacked by SCP-1155. He was pursued by law enforcement, who had been told by the SCP Foundation that he was an escaped mental patient suffering from serious delusion. The police chased him for several blocks before he disappeared down an alleyway. Officers at the scene reported hearing a scream, but when they got to where it came from, there was no sign of the D-class, just a dead-end alley with a blank wall. The other D-class, the one with no tongue, was successfully relocated to an undisclosed location. While the patient was being moved, though, Foundation surveillance noted an increased level of movement from SCP-1155.
It was trying to
track
him.
The painting was appearing and disappearing, and in each relocation, its posture suggested hunting and tracking behavior, as if it was pursuing the one who got away. The places it was manifesting also became more and more public. At one point, it appeared on the side of a building right in the middle of town, though it was too high up to be reached by any of the hundreds of witnesses. While all of this was happening, the D-class being held for medical treatment was becoming increasingly distressed. The Foundation theorized that the entity may have been frustrated at losing its prey, and that it would likely continue to relocate in and out of highly visible areas until the D-class was returned.
This thing's weird,
Because of this, the executive decision was made to take the D-class to the outskirts of the city. SCP-1155 manifested in the area, and the team left both it and the D-class unobserved. Both the creature and the D-class soon disappeared, and SCP-1155 resumed its more manageable hunting.
Man.
Due to this SCP's ability to jump from place to place, it has proven difficult, if not impossible, to contain.
How would you contain
Keter class
like that?
designation as a result. At first, the Foundation tried physically removing the wall on which the SCP had manifested,
it just disappears, right?
But this only caused it to relocate. A similar result happened following attempts to paint over or damage the painting.
It just
Current
teleports
containment
away.
procedures involve closely monitoring the disused shopping mall lot where SCP-1155 currently seems to live, for lack of a better term. The mall has been marked as condemned, and Foundation agents continually monitor the area, posing as security guards to dissuade any civilian traffic from entering the danger zone. Mobile Task Force
people go into these abandoned buildings all the time.
Tried to obscure any surface on which the creature appeared, but this didn't end well.
First,
the team later ordered that a vending machine be placed in front of the graffiti while it was located in an alley that transients were known to frequent. This was supposed to be only a temporary stopgap, intended to stop any unsuspecting person from falling under SCP-1155's hypnotic spell. In time, a proper containment zone would be established, with more agents forming a security perimeter around the area. But by the time the extra resources arrived and the vending machine was moved, the painting had disappeared. It had responded to the obstruction by relocating and reappearing on a wall at a nearby children's playground. The Foundation quickly mobilized, interrupting SCP-1155 in the middle of an attack in order to trigger another relocation.
Did it get a kid?
But sadly, several lives were already lost by the time they arrived.
Oh my, man.
The entire ordeal was
This
a
thing is
tragic
dangerous.
and costly mistake on the Foundation's part. It seems that when SCP-1155 is obstructed, it gets angry.
Yeah.
Instances where it relocated after being obstructed more often than not resulted in it moving to a much more public place that would be harder to contain for the Foundation. While it previously appeared in low traffic areas,
it's like, y'all want to mess with me?
Emboldened following containment attempts and was readily appearing in public spaces.
Okay.
It was argued that all of humanity would be better off allowing a few people to be taken by SCP-1155 every couple of years than risk it ending up in a heavily populated area where it could endanger who knows how many people before it was noticed.
That's a horrible truth, right?
The Foundation continued to research possible containment procedures,
take a few in order to save a lot.
And eventually figured out the perfect minimum distance at which they could create a barrier so that it wouldn't be noticed by the SCP itself.
Okay.
This was one of their more expensive containment protocols, as it required purchasing an entire mall, only to shut it down and condemn it under the pretense of there being a dangerous
so it wasn't abandoned in the first place. It was actually a populated mall.
As SCP-1155 is currently still inside the parking structure.
Where's the Foundation all get all that money,
the
man?
mall and the parking structure are under round-the-clock surveillance via motion capture security cameras. And while there have been no other relocations, there's no telling what might trigger one again. So if you live in a big city and you find yourself walking alone at night, keep an eye on the street art.
Just don't
If you spot a painting of half-human, half-owl that you could swear wasn't there before, resist the urge to check it out. And just cross the street instead.
That's right. That sounds scary. I wonder what happens if you take a picture of it with your phone. Like, I don't guess the picture would have any anomalous abilities. It would have to be that. Or can it transfer itself to digital images? That's kind of scary to think about too. At any rate, guys, this is a really, really cool one. Make sure to check out SCP Explained, as well as a couple other SCP Explained animations that I reacted to. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off. We'll see you next time.